Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Friday, October 4th, 2024. I'm Jason Priestis, Chris Lauterbach, Ramsey Nasrallah back after several weeks off. Man, looks like you're still on the road, man. Is that, I could sense hotel in the background. Is that accurate?
That's correct. It's just hotels these days. I don't recommend it.
Are you racking points up? Anything fun at least?
I'm accumulating an ungodly amount of points, which just allows me to go spend more time in hotels.
Well, I was gonna say your family appreciates your service at least. They'll get a nice beach vacation out of it, I'm sure.
If they remember me, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Did you guys know we're on day 2 of 55 consecutive days of football? NCAA or NFL. The next
Glorious.
day. Yeah, next day without football is basically the day before Thanksgiving. So we have, we had football last night on Thursday night. We got football tonight, every day for basically 55 days. And for me, that's why fall is just unbeatable, man. The weather change, open up some of your wardrobe a little bit, and then you got football for 55 straight days. I can't think of anything better.
We don't deserve this, but we'll take it.
No, not at all. Guys like Chris too. World Series, postseason baseball. Baseball fans have that layered on top. I got hockey season starting. It truly is the best time. A huge show today, man. Youth movement powering Ohio State's offense and defense. Buckeyes get a real test with Iowa in town this weekend. Michigan starting to show some cracks, and we'll tell you why it's the feel-good college football season. Let's start with that youth movement, man. Jeremiah Smith, we've talked so many times, the three of us and everyone else in Slack at 11 Warriors, about how good he was going to be. And I drank the Kool-Aid early, and I'm glad I did because it's looking like it was correct Kool-Aid to drink. Touchdown in every game. Named Big Ten Freshman of the Week. You're not supposed to have 2 one-handed catches in an entire season. And this dude has got 2 at Michigan State last weekend. He's 3rd all-time in receiving touchdowns for true freshmen right now with 5. Chris Carter's got 8. 4th in receiving yards by true freshmen, 364. Again, Carter leads that. And 5th in receptions by true freshmen with 19. Just 4 games in. I mean, he's going to have at least 11, 12 more games to play. So we love Chris Carter on the show, but he did kind of send a little bit of a salty tweet a couple weeks ago, letting everyone know he did it in a running offense in 10 games. It's okay, Chris. It's okay.
Chris, you were the only target on that team, too. No offense to Mike Lanise.
Mike was not Emeka Egbuka, that's for sure. Wide receivers on the current roster, is he the best one?
He's going to be. He's going to be if he's not already. I think Emeka's versatility, Emeka's blocking has been insane.
Emeka's the best offensive tackle on the team. Let's get to that.
I mean, taking out that linebacker last week was nuts, which, was nice. Smith is obviously on that trajectory, and by the end of the year, he probably would be. Right now, I think he is the most gifted. There is no doubt about that. But if you think of everything, just polish, some experience, all that kind of stuff, I think I'd probably still give Emeka just the slightest of nods, but I don't think that'll be the case by season's end.
So if you're starting a team and you get to pick one of those guys, you're taking Emeka?
I'm saying right now for this week kind of thing. I think Emeka is still.
Because I would take Smith over Emeka, and I hear you on the blocking, man. Emeka does a lot, but in terms of catching passes, Smith is way up here compared to just about everyone else in college football.
I think my answer is going to be kind of different. I think Emeka is the best receiver. I think Jeremiah Smith is their best player. And if you look at, you talked about having 2 one-handed catches in a game, let alone in a season. He had 2 one-handed catches in a drive.
Yeah,
and it was on. They were both on the Michigan State sideline, and they both happened in front of where all their recruits were for their big recruiting visit. And that game was effectively ended in the first half because they watched a guy who was in high school with them a year ago end the game.
Yeah,
by doing super freaky things. It ruined the recruiting weekend. It ended the game at halftime. They still weren't over it when they came out in the second half. And Ohio State just sliced them up after he had them shook. And as good as Emeka is as a receiver and all the fundamentals and as a leader, he can't end games because of a couple of plays the way that Jeremiah Smith can, because no one can do that on this team.
Yeah, Smith, he's obviously a freak. Jason, I know why you would say he's number one. And I wouldn't even argue it. You know what I mean? I think you could go either way. I think that you think about it's truly a splitting hairs. I don't think Emeka has a penalty yet this year. I don't think he has caused an interception yet this year. Those are a couple of things Smith has done. I think it's just those kinds of things. And then as the season stacks on and he gets more snaps, it's the reason why I think it'll be indisputably it would be Jeremiah by the end of the year. Right now, I think it's at least a conversation.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, that's a good defense of Emeka with the penalty and the interception on that go route he had earlier with Smith. But I think with Ramsey, I think he's the best player on the team right now. It's just smooth, man. Just like we heard so much. And let's ask this: is he the best freshman at OSU since Claret?
Well, Claret. We're 4 games in. At this point, I hate how quickly I remember this. Claret hadn't really missed a game yet. He got hurt and missed the Cincinnati game. That was in September, right? And so he ended up missing 4 games. So that's unfair. I think the more fair comparison would be to Braxton Miller as a freshman, who immediately became the focal point, someone you couldn't ignore in that offense. Whereas Claret's durability, so some weeks you just had to ignore him because he wasn't in the game.
In my eyes, I think about the guys that were great as freshmen. A lot of guys have been good as freshmen, like Garrett Wilson was good as a freshman. Olave had moments, but Claret, Katzenmoyer.
Yeah, Pace, Katzenmoyer,
Pace.
Yeah. Claret had 3 touchdowns in the kickoff classic against Texas Tech. And the stadium was chanting his name.
Yeah.
That was the first game. People need to remember how different that was.
It wasn't even just how good he was. It was the attitude that he ran with after years of just, think about what we're coming off of at that point in time, right? Just like a team with really, I don't want to say no heart, but a team that certainly couldn't win the big ones. And then all of a sudden you've got a coming in here that's brash. And, you'd heard everything coming into spring practice, about fall practice, about how he was, kind of ruffling some feathers. So I think fans were just dying for that kind of attitude to match in production to match.
Yeah, great point. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. I've already spoken. I think Smith's the best player on the offense. Is Caleb Downs the best player on the defense? Do we have does Ohio State have a freshman as the best player on offense and the sophomore as the best player? Is that for a loaded team that got all these guys coming? Is that true? Is that an accurate statement?
Could be true. Tyleek missing the last couple of games makes that difficult to answer. Tyleek might be the best player on the team. The sample size is small. We've seen what's happened in his absence, and obviously Caleb Downs is one of those people who's really flashed all year, and we knew he was going to be good. But let's see them put together a few games with both of them on the field. I think the answer will end up being Tyleek. No, that's not disrespecting Caleb Downs at all. He's awesome.
No. Well, it's like Smith and Emeka. It's like you can't, feels like you're disparaging one to defend the other, but they're both ridiculous. But I do think it's Caleb and Tyleek, to your point, though, Ramsey. I think those are the 2 best guys on Ohio State's defensive side of the ball. I think a good argument for Caleb is I've always thought Ransom was okay. And he's been hurt, some things like that, but with Downs back there, I feel like Ransom has just been ridiculous. On top of Downs just making his own plays, but I think he just creates this security blanket for everyone else. And they've talked about what a coach he is on the field. To me right now, and you're right with Tyleek being out, let's see a larger sample size. But to your question earlier, Jason, if you're drafting one guy, on each side of the ball kind of thing, I'm probably taking Downs before Tyleek, but he would be my second pick.
Yeah, came in with the pedigree. He's been great. He was great at Alabama last year. And then I felt like Michigan State was his first game that he really showed up in a big way. And that's probably a function of who they played. He wasn't getting all the snaps.
And what he was asked to do. Yeah.
Didn't need him to do much. But 6 tackles, led the team Saturday at TFL. Just felt him in that one. And Chris, I like your point about the security blanket because guys on the team talk about how comforting it is knowing they have Downs and Ransom, 2 of the best players back there, just kind of keeping things under lock.
Downs on that 3rd and 11. Just his ability to crash against the run. I don't know I don't know if I've seen anything like it for Ohio State before. I'm trying to not be a prisoner of the moment. Doss was obviously great in run support. Winfield was nasty and in run support, a little bit different position. But the way Downs diagnoses plays and can just cut down dudes in the hole, it's just amazing how quick he can get up there and just cut running backs down.
He plays very angry but controlled, which is the best kind of force because it demoralizes the team.
Yeah, and fast and smart. That's a tough combo too. A lot of guys are fast, but they don't read things as well. A lot of guys read things well, but they're not as fast. He seems to be able to do both. And hey, Chris, what about I know we talked about this Damon Moore a little bit.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, great run stuffing safety, but Downs is like a freak compared to him. And
yeah,
Damon Moore is a really good player.
Moore was sick. I feel like I remember him more of just the physicality, maybe even more so than the speed. With Downs, I'm just amazed. It's not like he's coming up and laying the biggest lick per se. He's physical, but it's just how quickly he is up there. He just comes out of the top, the right side of your screen, and boom, ball carrier's down.
Jumping to the linebackers, maybe a little more sensitive of a topic for Buckeye fans because there have been some good moments, but as a group, I don't think they've been elite through 4 games. Fans in particular, are starting to key on maybe Sonny Styles and watching what he does on plays. And Jim Knowles was asked about that this week, and here's what he had to say.
Very pleased with Sonny. I think he's being put into a lot of different situations. Playing Sam, playing Will, he's played Mike. All of those positions have their nuances to them, And I know this, that sometimes when you see him or any of our players not, being off on a play or looking like they're out of position, I mean, that to me goes back to me and training and coaching, right? I mean, there are so many details to these things that anytime a play goes wrong, and our players know this, I tell them, all your bad plays are on me, all your good plays are on you. So when I look at a play, I say, okay, he should have done this. But then I have to look at myself, and you have to say, how many times was he in practice put into that position versus that play? I mean, that's how you have to be accountable, I believe, as a coach, because we have really good players and really good kids.
What are your thoughts on that take from Knowles?
I think he's giving that answer directly to Sonny Styles. It wasn't for anyone else listening. It's the progression of his ascension from safety to linebacker in 4 games. You just talked about being right and fast with Caleb Downs. It takes more than 4 games to figure out what you just spent the previous couple seasons doing from a different position and applying that same sort of urgency and real physical presence. He looks lost because he's thinking, and he's not quite at the point now where he doesn't have to think anymore. Like Ryan Shazier, by the time he was a junior, didn't have to think anymore. He just went to where he needed to be, and he never took bad angles. It's not going to happen this week for Sonny Styles, or maybe next week. I think you probably got to wait until November before the thinking gets reduced to a level that's seen as acceptable. And I think they can win even while he learns, especially if they bring in Jordan Hancock and maybe keep Cody Simon on the field and get a little bit faster with teams that are going to air it out more. Obviously not Iowa this weekend, but probably Oregon next weekend.
Knowles did say that they basically will roll 3 depending on the linebackers, depending on what the offense shows, and certainly expect 3 this weekend. Chris, are you worried about Sonny? Are you with Ramsey? You think he'll by November he'll be that guy, or is there some concern?
I mean, I don't know if I'm worried yet, but I think "yet" is a word I put out there on purpose after it. I think right now you've got to give Sonny the benefit of the doubt, and I think Knowles is kind of saying it without saying it, of that they basically have asked him to do too much. Like, he came in early. He's learned a couple different positions now. I mean, they got him wearing he's making the calls. He's had the green dot on his helmet a couple games. They're just asking him to do a ton. He was playing some Sam against Michigan State too, when he's really the Will. He played played some Mike, or he's kind of rotated around after being the safety last year. So that just feels like a lot. And Ramsey, you hit it. I mean, if Sonny Styles is slow to the hole, it's not because he's slow physically, right? Like, that's obviously not the case. He's a physical freak. It's like, hey, what is he seeing? Does he trust his eyes? Does he know where he's supposed to be? Those kinds of things. So to me, the good thing about that is that's reps, right? Like, you assume that's reps, and he just needs more practice. And I think that's why even when he does make some plays that you're like, oh man, that was brutal, they keeping him out there, because I think he had 42 snaps last week. That was more than any of the other linebackers. Simon was 38. I think Reese was like 18. Hicks was 18. So you want to see him out there. But to me, it's like, okay, yeah, we're about to be 5 games in. You're about to be the midpoint of the regular season here pretty soon. So it's like, hey, you want to start seeing some ascension. So I'm not worried at this point, because I think they just asked him to do a whole heck of a lot. But I do think we're going to have to start turning a corner here pretty soon.
And they're picking on him. Offenses are picking on him. They're going after Iggy, and they're going after Styles.
Yeah, that's a great point. They're seeing what we're seeing, and Sonny does lead the team in tackles with 23. It's fun listening to Knowles in presser. He's so smart, and he gives good answers. Like, he talked this week about how you can spend all week preparing for something, and you get to the game, it's like they didn't even do what you put all that work into. And these are things that I don't know if fans.
I was going out 4 verts on Saturday. You heard it here first.
they're going to do what we think they're going to do, but other teams may deviate. But like that's just something, even me enmeshed in this all the time. I don't often think about things like that, so it's interesting to hear. He also spoke about the defensive slow starts, which Ohio State fans are the best in the world because the team is like top 5 in O categories and D categories, and they're still mad about like the slow starts, but they exist. Knowles said, quote, "We've started slow in the past couple of weeks, and I blame myself for that. There are thousands of permutations of what can happen. It's like, hey, I'm predicting this, and they did that." It's just kind of in line with what I was just talking about. They do lead the nation in points per game, giving up 6.8. You guys, is this just that adjustment D? Is that what they're going to be this season, or is that just something from the first few games, maybe some opponents they're not familiar with? What's your take?
I think they can afford to be an adjustment D against the teams that they've played thus far, and I think they can do that this weekend too. They're not playing an explosive team. They just played an explosive quarterback, but they can afford to sort of bend a little bit and allow collect some data before figuring out tendencies and getting comfortable with them, like they did the last couple of second halves against Marshall and Michigan State. Against teams that can be really explosive, I think you'll see a little bit more aggression up front. Even though they do have an offense that can score pretty quickly, they don't have to worry about how taxing it would be to play from behind. Like Iowa can't play from behind. No. I'm not sure Penn State can either. Oregon probably can. Ohio State definitely can. And that chain, everyone goes to the game with a plan, and then something happens. If it's suddenly 21-0, your whole plan goes to shit. You got to do something else. They have the flexibility and the talent to say, we can stick with our game plan pretty much throughout the game and afford to tinker a little bit and figure stuff out. And that's what they've done. Second halves have been brutal for Ohio State's opponents. They haven't been able to do anything.
Yeah, Michigan State 19 yards on 19 plays, 11 yards, something like that in the third quarter. Maybe it's reverse. Either way, it sucks.
Even if you take the Childs sack yardage out, they rushed for like 30-something. That's
well, and even with these slow starts, they're really not giving up any points when they do it. You don't want to depend on fumbles after a slant across your face and those kinds of things. But
we have to caveat that Michigan State got robbed of what was probably a touchdown drive by officials.
Yeah. But yeah, the most interesting thing to me is like it's almost kind of like as Knowles just doesn't want to give up a big play early or something like that, almost like it's 2023 Knowles kind of thing, and then gets more aggressive as the game as the game goes on. Maybe has a better read of what opponents are trying to do. I'm not sure. The other thing I think is interesting about that Knowles quote, Jason, that you played was that. Man, imagine an Urban coach saying that, like, it's, like, hey, all of your good plays are your fault, all your bad plays are my fault, kind of like that just wouldn't be it, right? It's just a product of like why I think Dave's a great coach, right guy, whatever. Like his demeanor and whatnot is what you need, I think, in today's football as far as relating to players and taking care of players and being a player's coach kind of thing. And for Knowles to say something like that, he says it all the time, is just interesting to me because it's just such in conflict with what maybe a previous regime might have had their defensive coordinator say when there's a bad play.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys are, if they're not already, they're quickly figuring out how to be players coaches because Urban didn't have to deal with the portal. Woody didn't have to deal with the portal and NIL offers trying to lure your best players away. So definitely a skill you need. One other fun, quick Knowles quote was asked this week what it would take for him to be satisfied with the defensive performance. And here it is, folks. 0 points, under 100 yards given up, 4 turnovers, scored twice on defense. So that may happen this year. I don't think that's off the board. I mean, they got some some bad teams still left on the schedule. Not easy to do. The shutout's really hard in college football. But
one of us. That sounds like an Ohio State. Like that's the bar of success.
Hey, 4 turnovers.
He's a fan too. He's a fan too. He's home. He's like, who's calling these plays?
We should be shutting out everyone and scoring 80.
He is one of us, man. Welcome to the fold, Jim. You're going to love it. For the second week in a row, Ohio State kind of switched it up with who was back on kickoff returns. At Michigan State, Emeka Egbuka was back for kickoffs. They said that they basically moved him from back to up because he thought that Sparty was going to maybe kick onside. He said, quote, "We felt like there was a chance of them trying to steal a possession." And I thought that was just super interesting. And
the victory is that there was actual strategy for special teams. And that was the best special teams performance they've had in 3 years because nothing happened.
Yeah, clean game. Chris, who do you like back there, Ennis or Emeka better? Are you?
I like Ennis back there just because I think Emeka's going to get plenty of chances to touch the ball. I don't think he needs to touch it on kickoff return. And, not that that's a play where you're just guaranteed to get hurt, but why put Emeka back there in that case? Ennis is a guy you want to get some touches anyway. I've said a million times I like Ennis on punt return specifically because I like his build, right? Like I just think he's got that good, that good build for punt return. He's more shifty than Emeka, that kind of thing. You don't have to immediately be shifty on kickoff return, obviously, but I like getting him back there. But honestly, kickoff return, other than the thought of, hey, making sure you're planning for onside or pooch or anything funky like that, I like that thought. But Ohio State's returned 2 kickoffs this year so far. So to me, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. It's just a play where it's just don't F it up. But punt return, I'm excited that it continues to be Ennis because I think there's going to continue to be a chance. There's been 12 punt returns this year, and they're already miles better than they've been, for probably 5 years on punt return so far. So to me, just keep Ennis back there because he's a guy that you want to continue to get experience and touches and whatnot, knowing that Emeka is going to get plenty of touches in just the organic offense.
Battle at right guard. Got Tegra Shabola and Austin Searvold still kind of trading snaps. I mean, Tegra got 47, Austin got 30 against Michigan State. And then Day's, coming out and saying there's nothing on film that's, setting one guy ahead or behind. They both graded out similarly. We'll see how the prep goes this week and decide as the game gets closer. I continue to think that's just a depth play. That's where I'm at right now because, at first I'm like, is this a battle? Are they going to name someone? But, they got 2 guys they like. Get them depth, man. Get them both as many snaps as you can, especially in games like this when you're getting 30-point wins on the road in the Big Ten or the out-of-conference games, and you have an opportunity to do that.
I think depth for sure. It feels like he's just making sure Searvold stays engaged, feels rewarded because he's earned the right to play. I like that, but I just feel, Tegra has been, I feel like the expense of talking up Searvold, it's almost been like not sure if Tegra's really the guy. I've not seen him do anything but be really good. Personally, I think he's been fine, and he got 50% more snaps, like you said, 47 to 30 or something like that. I do know that all of Tegra's snaps in that game were all with the starters of the first 5 series. I think Searvold got 3 series with the ones. So to me, it feels like whether he says it or not, Tegra right now, I don't know what their scoring was. He said they graded out similarly, kind of thing. But I personally, I'm not an offensive line coach, but I've seen nothing to say that Tegra shouldn't be the starter. If you want to split the snaps like that to keep Searvold developing, then hey, I think that's a smart move. But Tegra feels like RG1 to me.
Yeah, I like Tegra's feet better. This tells you how much time I've been spending on planes. I was watching offensive lineman feet. Tegra's got better feet. I think Searvold is much better at passing off blockers to the tackle or to someone else. He's actually been really good at that, and he has less experience. So I think the footwork will come. Searvold's just relying on natural ability and focusing on what he's being told to do as a guard. Hey, this is what you got to do. You're not going to occupy one space with one guy the whole time. You're buying X number of seconds on passing plays, and you're opening a hole and getting to the next guy on running plays. And he's been doing that. It's been a little bit awkward below the waist, but all you're doing is building depth and having serviceable offensive linemen. And think about where we were a month and a half ago talking about what's the right side of this line going to look like. It's better than we thought.
Saturday, Ohio Stadium, 3:30 p.m. on CBS. Ohio State welcomes the 3-1 Iowa Hawkeyes, man. Bucks are going to wear all gray for this one Saturday. Been pumping those all week. First time, I guess the second time they wore those. The first time they wore them was against
last year, Sparty.
Yeah, Sparty.
It's a gray out, and that's not just referring to the people who sit between the 40-yard line.
That's right.
That's every game's a gray out there.
It's a blue out.
That's a blue out. It's
blue out.
Last time they wore them, Marv had 3 touchdowns in the first 15 minutes and 2 seconds of play. That was fun. 2-time All-American Chris Ward to be honored ahead of his induction in the College Football Hall of Fame. And then you got 3 former Buckeyes being honored going into the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. Braxton Miller, who you brought up earlier in the show, Ramsey, Matt Wilhelm, and Jeff Logan. And it's a neat stage of life right now because I remember being a kid and seeing these guys going in. I was like, I never saw them, and now I'm like, I've seen these guys and I know what their careers are like. And that's kind of fun to see.
Matt Wilhelm's son is on a recruiting visit this weekend, in case you didn't feel old enough.
Did you see Jeff Logan? I saw a picture of Jeff. He had some long ass hair. I feel like every picture I've ever seen him is short hair, and he had some long locks. I'm like, man, I figured Woody would slap.
I was going to say, I bet Woody loved that.
That's not that.
Probably went home and cursed.
Do you guys have any Jeff Logan memories of him playing for Ohio State? I've met him. I went to one of the functions, the charity functions, and someone he's not a big guy, small guy, and I remember someone asked how did you have the stats that you had? Let me look at you. And he's like, I'll show you. And he stood up, and I think it was Pete Johnson was there. It's like, Pete, come here. And Pete was standing on the stage, and Jeff Logan stood behind him. and from behind it, you couldn't see him. He still had his mic. He's like, "This is what the defenses saw at the snap." They had no idea where I was.
That's helpful. Yeah, if you got one of those guys. That's a fun story. 18.5-point line, opened at 20, so a little money's coming Iowa's way. Bucks, of course, lead the series 47-15-3. They won the last meeting. This is just the third meeting in the last 11 years, which is nuts. Buckeyes won in 2022. They put 54 on Iowa and Columbus. But the time before that was 2017. Chris and I were at that game. Iowa hung a 5-5 spot on the Buckeyes. We were talking so much trash that entire weekend, and we left. That's the last game I left. I left in the third quarter. I'm like, all right.
They ejected Nick Bosa.
Yeah. Oh,
that was it.
About that. Yeah. Kinnick was basically vomiting scarlet in the third quarter. It was just like a stream of Ohio State fans.
It was out. Yeah.
I'm not an Iowa fan. I bet that was a fun night in Iowa City. I bet that was a fun night because that's a.
I remember thinking they're going to lose like next week 10-6 after scoring 55, and they went right back to regular Iowa after that game.
Coached by Kirk Ferentz, our good buddy. He's 26 season, man, longest tenured FBS coach in America. Last Big Ten title was 2004, so they've kind of accepted something out there that fans here would certainly with no way they would accept this here. They love him. I think he can coach here until he wants to not coach there. But here's a good reason to hate him. If you're an Ohio guy, especially a Northern Ohio guy. He was part of the Brown staff that moved to Baltimore. Last job before Iowa, he was the associate head coach and offensive line coach for the Ravens in '98. But he was part of that Brown staff that, like, when Modell was like, all right, it's time, I get you got a job, but, like, all right, we get to hate you then, man, because you left and were part of stealing Cleveland's heart. So I think that's fair.
I did not know that.
I'll always be enamored with that Hayden Fry staff that basically was 20% of future FBS head coaches were. It's like him, Barry Alvarez, Bill Snyder, Ferentz. Like, you look at the picture, like, oh my God, all those guys are head coaches.
Yeah, unreal. And you gotta love Hayden because he's, God rest his soul, he's the only coach that I can think of that I've seen wear white pants on the sidelines.
And scrambled egg.
Yeah, he had the Admiral hat going on.
With the rope, the yellow rope across the black bill.
That's right. But the white, it's tough to pull off white pants as a man, especially as a D1 football coach. So.
After Labor Day, every year.
He didn't care. He was wearing them in November, man. That's Hayden Fry. He wears what he wants. Iowa, of course, won their opener against Illinois State 40-0. That was a game Kirk Ferentz was suspended for tampering to get Cade McNamara to come to Iowa. So instantly no Ferentzes anywhere on the sideline, no Kirk or Brian, and they put up 40 points. Week 2, they blew a game against Iowa State, and Iowa State's undefeated, so they got a decent team. But they were leading 19-7 with 4:43 left in the game. Like, you can't lose that game.
No.
Beat Troy soundly, and then beat, I think, probably a decent Minnesota team in their last game, 31-14. They won that game with 62 yards passing, 272 yards rushing, which is a theme we'll talk about here in just 1 second. And off last week, you guys worried about giving the mastermind Kirk Ferentz another week to prepare?
What's he going to do? Run another stretch play into the?
He drew up 4 more dives he loves. He's like, "Well, this is a better one."
I think that Minnesota was the opposite of beneficiary. That's a rivalry game for Iowa. They play for Floyd of Rosedale, and for Iowa to blow the Cyhawk Trophy and then go right to Minnesota. I'm pretty sure they heard all about how they blew one trophy the week before. They weren't going to blow another one.
Good point.
And they kicked their dicks in.
They did.
I think Minnesota's okay. I think Michigan's worse, but that's a different show.
I'm not sure Minnesota's good. I mean,
I don't know if they're good. I think they're probably like top half of the big. When
that's top 9.
Yeah, well, it's a big field now, right?
I'll give you 9th. Yeah,
you give me 9th. Thanks. Because there's some teams that aren't. There's the bottom half too. Brian Ferentz this year as offensive coordinator, to everyone's joy in Iowa City. I'm sure.
He's in Maryland.
He is in Maryland. He's a quality control guy for him or something right now.
Sparty beat them.
Love that profession where you just like, oh, you need a job? Come on, I got something for you. How do we get into coaching? Because
you got to get the right dad, then you can work for.
Yeah, that helps. That's a big cheat code. But we screwed up, man. I think our lives would, 100-hour weeks, granted. But
normally, if you suck, you got to move a lot. Though he was able to post up in Iowa City for a long time. But you always have jobs, but you might
look at Grinch.
Around.
Look at Grinch. I mean,
he's bounced around.
Alex Grinch. All you got to say, like, unreal. The guy's probably made $4 million over the last 7 years or so. Maybe a little bit more. Total offense under Brian was, in the 121 to 133 range the last 3 years. Scoring offense, very similar. New guy, Tim Lester, former Western Michigan head coach, Packers analyst. They're averaging 32 points per game, which is 53rd in the country, which for us may not sound awesome, but kind of awesome for them. 398 yards per game, 65th. They can only run the ball, though. 250 rushing yards per game, and they've got a Cincinnati kid, Caleb Johnson. He's averaging 171 a game, 8.4 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Made some noise this week saying he wouldn't have picked Ohio State if they offered him because he wants to beat Ohio State. Guy's got 100 yards in every game. That's what he's got to say, right?
I have no problem with it.
You don't go there to say you want to lose to Ohio State. I don't know if he had an Ohio State offer. I don't feel like I don't know that he did. So
did not. No.
But yeah, I mean, whatever. Be confident.
206 against Minnesota, 187 against Iowa State. Just guy's a beast. I mean, but the good thing is that's their only beast because Cade McNamara, you guys know that guy really well. You know, they're averaging 147 yards per game passing, which is 124th in the country, 5.9 yards an attempt. Just like some pretty bad stuff. Kind of almost Michigan-esque, but I think Michigan's way worse, which is fun to talk about. 3 games since his opener, he's averaged 112 passing yards per game with 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Like the defense has to be feeling like they're in a good spot for this one. Yeah. Receivers, best game, 5 for 66 for Reese.
Luke Lachey.
They do
it's
have
going to be a Sonny Styles kind of game for that tight end.
Number 2 receiver for them with 12 for 97 for the season. One of those guys you wish was in scarlet and gray and know his dad really well. And
he will make some plays. He's a good player. Ohio State had issues with Velling a couple times last week with from Michigan State, and Lachey is not. We're not just gonna gas him up because he's Lachey's son. He's actually good, and Ohio State so far, Sonny and Cody have had a hard time covering tight ends.
Big challenge, especially for Sonny, I think, because he's going to probably draw that more often than not. And Luke, of course, is from Grandview High School right here in town. And I know Jim, it's tough for him because he's the radio guy for Ohio State games. So imagine your kid is fortunate enough to get a D1 scholarship, play in the Big Ten. You hardly ever get to watch him play. That's tough. Good defense, especially run side, man. They're 15th in the country, points a game. 4th in the country, giving up only 62 rushing yards a game. Good test for Ohio State's 2-headed backs. Again, you know what they are. There should be nothing when you play Iowa that surprises you.
I think he said that all week, right? He said he doesn't say exactly what it is. He just talks about how their identity is known and it hasn't changed, and they're good at what they do because it's what they've done for forever, kind of thing. So yeah, you know exactly what you're going to get. Physical team that wants to play in a phone booth, can't throw it. It's going to try to run it, and we'll probably have a pretty good front seven
with a slightly degraded defensive backs. So it's the usual Iowa. Vulnerable on the edges, and if Will Howard can be Goodwill, I think that's a tough spot for Iowa.
It is, and I love it because it's basically a tune-up for the last game of the season. I mean, you're getting to play a team that's very, very similar.
You're getting better Michigan up front.
And that's the funny thing is couldn't tell you right now who's better between those teams. Like, is Iowa better than Michigan right now, or is Michigan a better team?
It's a different show, but the one thing that's interesting about Michigan, and I can't tell what changed year over year, they're just not a good second half team all of a sudden for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has to do everything with coaching and players and nothing else at all.
Yeah, it was the moon phases, I think, is what caused that change.
Mercury's in retrograde, so they suck in the second half now.
Can't figure it out either. No more Big Ten West, Big Ten East. Going to be a fun November with everyone jockeying to get into that game. But Chris, you got this, man. Iowa's schedule, they avoid Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, Michigan, USC, Illinois, and Rutgers. Like, how many is that? 7? 7 of probably the top 9 teams in the league? They
got to win this game. This is a big game for them. Straight
up. Mission 7 of the top 9s in the teams in the league. Those teams that we just rattled off, 28-3 on the season, outscored their opponent by 573 in 31 games, just smoking people. They do play Minnesota, who they beat. Ohio State this weekend. Washington, that's a winnable game for them. Michigan State, winnable. Northwestern, winnable. Wisconsin, winnable. UCLA, winnable. Maryland. They could lose to Ohio State and win out because they closed into Maryland and Nebraska. I mean, that's an easy.
If Iowa pulls the upset, Big Ten championship game is going to be Indiana, Iowa, and no one's going to ever be the same.
Oh man, I can't even think about that. That's going to break my brain if that happens. They're going to be in it. They're going to be chasing. And if another team stumbles, Ohio State may have to play Iowa again because they're undefeated in the Big Ten. If Ohio State beats them this weekend, they've got this cakewalk the rest of the way. If Oregon stumbles or Ohio State's got the head-to-head, I don't know. I got to dig into the tiebreakers, but I'm saying don't count Iowa out. I don't think they're a good team, but their schedule is complete ass. Is kind of my official statement on the situation.
Yeah, it's wild to play teams that are, or avoid teams that are 28-3. The other teams are 24-17.
You know, old heads like us can look back at OSU history, and we know the Big Ten history, and the people are like, oh, Northwestern won the Big Ten that year, and we're like, that's because they didn't play. They got Ohio State off their schedule. They didn't have to play them that year, like, which happens every time Northwestern somehow gets to the Rose Bowl back in the day. It's like they didn't play Ohio State. You know, like we know how that works, and Iowa's getting that big time. Some things to watch for in this one. What's Ohio State's front seven going to do against Caleb Johnson? Again, he's a beast. Is Tyleek back? Will he be a legit factor? Do the linebackers look better? You know, I think it's going to be a lot of 4-3. Where are you guys at? Do you think they meet the test here?
Yeah, I think Tyleek is back. I think Ohio State, I think Jim Knowles puts a premium on the winning first down and putting them in second and long situations, giving them 2 plays to get 10 yards. Like, cancel the first one, make them get 5 yards a play for second and third down. And if they start to do that and put Iowa in position where they're looking at a score like that's going to take us 5 quarters to even up, then get that done in the first half, and then you can have a little bit more fun. And I would bet on Ohio State to be able to do that, especially with Tyleek healthier and also fresher.
Yeah, I think Tyleek sat out last week for a reason. I mean, you know, they figured this would be a much different kind of test from a running game perspective. Knows the linebackers are struggling a little bit. You got a better chance to keep them clean with Tyleek in there. You know, McNamara can't throw, so I would expect Ohio State's going to, kind of crowd the box a little bit and dare him to throw. And Caleb Johnson, he's put up ridiculous numbers. If you watch the highlights, I watched like the condensed game of the Minnesota game where he went off, had 3 touchdowns, however many, 200, ridiculous numbers. But he's not, to me, he's not overly elusive or shifty. He's fast, but he was running through some pretty big holes. And I don't, again, do not say that to take anything away from him. I just don't see him as a guy that is going to, he doesn't have the jump cut that Travion does. Like, he's just not that shifty. He's a pretty upright guy. You watch, I mean, he runs like straight up. It's wild how upright he is when he runs. I don't know. I feel like Ohio State's going to be able to control him because of the type of back he is and because of how bad Iowa's passing game is.
Flipping it, Ohio State's going to have a good opportunity to face, the best front they've faced all season. Do you think we'll see Trey and Quinshon have decent games? And then how do you think Chip Kelly is going to attack this in terms of, like, does he come out and try to establish the run? Does he throw it to loosen up the run? How do you guys see that playing out?
I think he's coming out throwing. I think this is a different kind of. If Day was doing it, he would stubbornly try to prove that he could run the ball against Iowa. Reacting to the punch on that one, I think probably. But
are we glad that he's not? Yeah, that Chip has the control. Yeah,
I think Chip is going to be much different. And when he does run the ball initially, it's what he's been doing all season. It's not necessarily right at you to prove a point. It's counters and traps and guys pulling all over the place and Emeka hitting linebackers and stuff like that. But their pass defense is not very good. They do have an interception in every game, but I do not think statistically they've looked that great. Ramsey, you mentioned, they don't have the same secondary they've had. They've always had a couple good, at least one NFL corner on their team, and right now that just doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm kind of expecting Ohio State to come out throwing, let that set up the run a little bit. But when those runs do come, I don't know that they're, Dave. It's let's do some of this misdirection. Let's do some of these things that we do to take advantage of the quickness of some of these guys on the offensive line and run the ball that way against Iowa. But I think it's pass first, run second.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. Pass first, but coming in, those passes will be coming off of run pass options that'll effectively become play action. They're so disciplined up front. I think we'll end up seeing a lot of mesh just because they'll be guarding spaces. They'll rely on Will Howard to throw, not like into tidy CJ Stroud windows, but to hit guys that are going to be in enough, going to have enough space around them. And that'll end up setting up things like counters, draws when they start to get back on their heels. But I think the pass sets up the run this Saturday.
I agree with both you guys. I think Chip Kelly's having a good time, and it's been fun to watch. Go to 11warriors.com as soon as you can, and there's a film study from Kyle Jones. It just shows like how crafty Chip is and like how much fun he is. He's got the best toys now. Imagine like you're a good dirt bike racer, and all of a sudden someone hands you a Ferrari or something. I feel like that's what's happened to Chip. Another fun battle this
Watch
weekend.
real quick
Yeah.
on that, Jason. You mentioned it, but literally go watch and watch if nothing else, the first 7-8 minutes of that film study. When Kyle breaks down, they came out in the same formation, 3 straight plays in a row, capped by the Jeremiah reverse. The 2 plays before that were in the exact same formation, but guys moved a little bit differently, blocked a little. It's just amazing. I mean, it's Chip just building one play off the other, setting up that reverse the whole time. It's Kelly was ridiculous, but Kyle's breakdown is equally. It's just like, wow, in the moment I don't realize in the exact same formation and running the same guy in motion 3 times in a row. I don't notice that live too often.
There's a reason Jeremiah was untouched. It was a cool galloping gazelle type of run, but they had gotten muscle memory trained to react a certain way. It's really effective.
Almost like an older brother picking on a little brother when Chip's dialing up on these guys with these weapons.
And he doesn't coach emotionally, which is such a benefit of having an offensive coordinator who just does that and doesn't have to be plugged into to all of it. I don't think he misses his old job at all.
No.
Likes what he's doing now.
I always come back to what Hafley said that Day told him when he was trying to recruit him, that he said, Jeff, you come here where there's great players, they're going to make you look like a better coach. And like that's so true. I mean, Chip's looking like the dude again. He's got his old form back because he's got all these weapons. Alumni at Iowa, some fun ones. Gene Wilder, who is in one of the funniest movies I've ever – lots of funniest movies. I mean, Blazing Saddles is great too. I was going to say Frankenstein, but like he's been in some dingers in terms of movies. Just a funny dude. Tom Brokaw, broadcast journalist. We know him. Tennessee Williams, author of A Streetcar Named Desire. Ashton Kutcher, you guys know him. And I didn't know George Gallup was Gallup poll was an Iowa grad. Learn that putting this together. Anyone we're missing?
Brian Ferentz graduated from Iowa.
Brian Ferentz, that's true. Okay. Probably went to school for free. I bet that was part of Dad's contract. His whole life has just been like greasy and just easy, hasn't it?
Really good offensive lineman.
It's time for Rapid 5. The rules are simple. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Let's go.
All right. Through 4 games, what position group gives you the most confidence?
For me, it's the running backs.
Running back, wide receiver, safety, running back first.
Name a stadium you'd love to watch Ohio State play in.
That 500,000 seat arena they have in Pyongyang, in North Korea.
Ohio State, Buckeye Nation would fill that place if they could.
See them play the DPRK All-Stars.
Yeah, just smash.
They don't allow any Ohio State fans to leave. They have to go work in the salt mines.
Mine will be boring because you guys have probably been there, but traditional is Rose Bowl for me because I've not been out there. And then Yankee Stadium after that would be my non-traditional.
So you want them to go to the Pinstripe Bowl? Interesting choice.
Hates Ohio State. I'm gonna tell Jim Knowles.
It could be like a non-conference first game. It could be something like that.
Having seen Ohio State play in the Rose Bowl and having been to a couple of Pinstripe Bowls, I hope that happens for you. I don't want to be here on for Ohio State to be playing in that game.
Been to a Rose Bowl. Very, very cool. It's as cool as you think it is, and they make it out to be. But so for me right now, it's LSU. I love to go down to Death Valley. Love to hang out and tailgate and do a night game down there. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Third question: where do you rank C.J. Stroud right now among NFL quarterbacks?
5th.
It's easier to start from the top. He's behind Mahomes, Herbert, maybe Prescott.
No, he's booty.
5th for Chris. Ramsey, you got him at 4th, sounds like.
He's top 7. I need more time to think about it, but
You got Burrow, you got,
Mahomes, Burrow, Allen,
Jalen Hurts,
Lamar. I'd put in.
he's behind Lamar. He's ahead of Hurts. Yeah. Hurts is already sort of broken.
Between 5 and no worse than like 8th, I feel like.
I got him 3rd right now. I got him right behind Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
I think he's 3rd as a processor behind those two.
Yeah.
But the other stuff still. I mean, he's the second damn season.
Other than Ohio State, who has the best uniforms in college football?
I'm going to go with Western Kentucky this weekend. They have the giant eyeballs on the side.
Those are fun. Those are a lot of fun.
Bama's are classic.
Damn, I was going to say Bama.
I like Ole Miss's little baby blues. Like if you're just being, I don't know. I don't like the helmets so much, but their color scheme I like.
Yeah, Chris, I think the Trader uniform is great. Well, good answer.
Last question. Best trashy food you've ever eaten? And we were joking before the show. I think we could probably have a long, like, Santa Claus type list if we really dug into this. But, something that you can think of. And it's kind of like, I probably wouldn't eat that if I was sober or not dying of hunger.
I once accepted a bet and collected the money to eat one of those suitcases of White Castles.
How many is in the suitcase?
I think it's 20.
You put down 20 sliders?
Yeah. I'm not proud of it.
Was this younger days, right?
Oh, this was this morning. Yeah, it was a while ago.
This age, man, it would sideline us, one of us, for like 3 months. Like,
No, I wouldn't be with you if I had 20 White Castles.
I can't walk. I got 20 White Castles in me.
No.
That's a good one, man. It's all suitcase shit, dude.
Yeah, they sell them in suitcases.
That's impressive.
Star Crunch. I could eat like a dozen Star Crunches right now.
Star Crunches? Those are your jam, huh?
It's like the gangster Little Debbie version.
Yeah. I want to say
Gangster Little Debbie.
I want to say
They're
those
not
are
like Hostess, they're like the cheaper ones at the gas
Right,
station.
yeah.
You got like the
Off-brand.
Primos and you got like the Great Value. And the Star Crunches are pretty good.
Good deal. I'm going to go with the Barnyard Buster at TJ's. If you've not had it, you should. There's not many. There's only 3 TJ's left. There's South End, West Broad. There's a lot of spots I don't want to drive to, basically. But Barnyard Buster, if you haven't, you got to try it. And there's, they're better at 3 a.m. than they are at noon, I'm guessing. Don't see this that often. The Big Ten changed a rule because of Michigan. Wolverines playing the 2-2 Gophers at home last weekend had just surrendered a touchdown to cut their lead to 27-24. Minnesota then executes the perfect onside kick, recovering at the Michigan 35 or so. Gophers had just scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, so you're like, man, this may happen. They could beat the Wolverines. Mysteriously, the Gophers were called for offside on that kick, and you watch the replays. Even like the guy, I don't know who it was, like Dean Blando or someone they call in, or like, what's your take on that? I was like, that was definitely not offside. I don't know what that guy was thinking.
Mike Pereira, maybe? Yeah.
So the Big Ten comes out a couple days later and is like, yeah, we've changed the kickoff rule. The guy that used to make the offside call is going to focus on something else, and the guy that's actually closer to the line of scrimmage is going to make that call. Man, so close to seeing those guys devastated. But I feel like we're starting to see cracks. And you touched on it earlier, Ramsey.
They're not very good. I want to make one. I want to propose a rule change. This doesn't have to be a Michigan-related rule change. We see the refs. They show their faces. They're on camera. They're mic'd up. Who's in the replay booth? Show those guys. Like, I think about the 2019 Fiesta Bowl, when Jordan Fuller scores a touchdown and some mysterious ghoul in Birmingham probably reverses the call on the field with abundant evidence. Who is that person? So I think they, instead of going to Mike Pereira, go to the clown in the booth and have him be like, hey, I've got my VCR here. This is why I'm reversing it. They should have to do that.
Yeah.
It just creates so much cynicism when they're like, it's being controlled by literally a guy behind the curtain. Get rid of the damn curtain. That's
Big Ten actually has a control center now, too.
Yeah, like show them or just like be able to talk to them, or what do you?
Dox him.
The only time I feel like I've seen it recently was that, and you mentioned, Jason, that Virginia Tech Miami game when the replay with the end zone complete,
Yeah.
They did cut to like, wherever it was, ACC, whatever, you saw a couple guys huddled around, like probably like a 50-inch TV on the wall.
Bong sitting on the table.
They're like, so Twitter was surmising that was the commissioner saying Miami needs to win this game kind of thing. I feel like it's the only time I actually remember seeing the replay, the replay.
Take the mask off. As for Michigan, they if they didn't win the national title last year and you were just watching them in a vacuum with no memory of what just happened, you'd be like, wow, they're lucky to be 4-1. That's going to be like a 7-5 team once they start to play some folks. They played one good team and got their doors blown off. Yeah, I think obviously when you have 46 seniors and half of those guys are COVID 50-years that are 25 years old, and you've got strong coaches, the infrastructure had gelled from what he turned over in 2020, and you've got one of the most elaborate cheating scandals in the history of the sport on top of all that. Of course they were good.
Yeah.
They lost all of that. So you can say, oh, they're only taking a step back because they lost cheating. They're only taking a step back because Harbaugh's gone. Only taking a step back because they lost 46 seniors. They lost all of that stuff, which tells you just how well positioned they were last year.
Yeah.
They're not going to get unless they can conjure up another wet market in Wuhan. They're not going to get the benefit of COVID. No one benefited more from COVID than Ann Arbor, which is typical. But they're what they did the last 3 years is not sustainable. And I know it's a small end through 5 games. If they're hoping that what they just had the last 3 years is going to come back, they're going to be waiting a long time. I
agree. And this is the fear whenever you replace someone that wins something big and you get the new guy and you're always like, man, don't be a Helfrich, or, don't be someone else that's done that. But you're starting to see these cracks, or at least I am. Like, last 3 weeks, man, last 3 games, they've lost the second halves. And these were games last year. And maybe this is because they had, 25-year-olds all over their roster or what have you, but in the other coaching staff. But those are games they put away and choked people out last year. And, they almost lost to Minnesota. USC makes it a run in the second half after being down. Even Arkansas State closed out that game to make it a 10-point Michigan squeaker. you're seeing some of that. And then did you guys notice last week when Orgy's trying to kill the clock, taking snaps with 10 seconds on the clock? I think they even brought it up in the broadcast.
Flat called it out repeatedly,
And it's like, I can't think that would be something that would happen under Harbaugh. And I hate saying good things about Harbaugh, but I just can't believe that he would have been on that. They would not have been.
It's more of a bad thing about Moore. Any coach that knows what they're doing when they've got a lead like that should be waiting until the clock is 3, 2, 1, type seconds before you hike it. And he was doing it with like 10 seconds repeated.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's not Orgy, or it wouldn't have happened more than once.
So you're seeing the cracks.
I mean, Orgy's bad in his own right, but I'm saying I feel like that is, especially when you can talk to the quarterback. Hey, stop hiking the fucking ball before there's when there's still 10 seconds on the play clock. I think that's just inexperience from the of the head coach.
This is probably some bias, but some realism. I think they're in for a rough ride with Moore, and again, the cracks are starting to show. And you guys think he'll get 3 years up there?
I think that they're well positioned to go 8-4, 9-3, and with a couple of the 8 or 9 that they're lucky to get, and a couple of the 3 and 4 that also they're lucky to get. Iowa with upside is, I think, a strong assessment from Brian Cook. I just don't think it's just for one season. I think this is who they are now.
I love it. I'm tuning in every week to watch their demise, and I hope it plays out.
Hate watching Michigan.
Slowly in pain. Week 6, Indiana, Rutgers, both unbeaten. First 5-0 start for the Hoosiers since 1967. We're all old, but none of us were alive that year.
Nope.
Finally ranked, they're 23rd, man. They topped Maryland last weekend 42-28 despite turning the ball over 4 times. That's a sign of a good team. You turn it over 4 times and still win by double 2 scores. That's a good team. Next 4, man, at Northwestern, Nebraska at home, Washington at home, at Michigan State. This team could easily be 9-0 when they welcome Michigan on November 9th. And if they're 9-0 welcoming Michigan, they're going to be favored and they're going to win that game. And speaking of things that make us happy, that will do all the above.
They play unafraid football.
They do. Signetti's
There's
great.
no fear in what they do.
That's a great way to describe. I actually watched it last week too because I bet on them. And both times I've watched them play. I mean, offensively, they go after you. 3rd and 1, he might throw a 15-yard pass. I mean, they're not messing around.
That's one of those take the personality of your coach and deploy that as a game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Sig is like
power it has over the long term, but the rejuvenation effect, is huge right now.
Do you remember the whole thing, like when Day allegedly said he wanted to hang 100 on Michigan, and then it just sort of like it became in the ether. Day never addressed it. If Sig said something like that, he'd be like, I said hang 100. You're going to hang 100 on him. Like, that's how he would be.
Yeah, get this quote right. This is exactly what I said. Yeah, I love it. I think it's fun. I love the cigarette memes. I saw someone had an F-16 the other day with the IU logo on it. It was shooting cigarette missiles. I'm like, I love that. That's fun. Rutgers 4-0 for the first time since 2012. That's incidentally Shiano's first year with the Buccaneers. But 55K in last Friday to watch him beat Washington. Good environment. They blacked out. They're having fun there, too. I've said it a million times, but Greg Schiano was put on earth to coach Rutgers and nothing else. I'm convinced of that. And just kind of fun to watch, man.
The Schiano, man. I get to watch their last game when they do the blackout. That's a whole part of the country where you have to be good. There's no like slow build to enthusiasm. It's either we're uninterested until you give us a reason to be interested.
Yeah.
And they've given them a reason to be interested. They're fun to watch. Great defense. Run the ball well.
I don't have it in front of me, but their schedule's terrible too. They avoid.
It is.
We talked about it, maybe a month ago on the show. But they miss a lot of guys this year.
They don't have to play the Big Ten East anymore.
Yeah, Iowa Rutgers Big Ten Championship, man. You heard it here first. That's going to happen. Some games of note this week in the Big Ten, 9 p.m. tonight on Fox. Michigan State at number 6, Oregon. Ducks favored by 23.5. This is a game where, for me, I'm like, man, it'd be fun to see kind of how they do against a team as a similar opponent and all that. But coming off that tough loss to Ohio State, I think they got to travel all the way to West Coast. I think they're going to get a bomb dropped on their head. I'm kind of worried for Michigan State here. You guys in the same boat? Sounds like
I think their coach coming from Oregon, not Oregon, but the state of, is going to make this with his team a little bit about him. I left here to come to you. Let's show up. Let's be the best version of what we're trying to get to. Let's try to accelerate that. We just saw what good looks like against Ohio State last week. Let's not show up and step backwards. Let's show up and advance from what we just went through.
And that's a good point. I mean, he could tell his guys too, like, we don't make these dumb mistakes against Ohio State.
He was an Oregon State quarterback. The one hates Oregon more than him.
That's a good point. Good point. Did not even think about that. Good point. 4 p.m. Saturday, FS1. Undefeated Rutgers at Nebraska. Cornhuskers favored by 7. 7:30 on NBC. Number 10 Michigan at Washington. Now, Washington's 3-2 on the season, but they were 2-point favorites. It's down to 1.5. That's kind of rare to see a top 10 team as an underdog to an unranked team on the road. I don't know how many times I've seen that in life.
When's the last time you saw an unranked team lose to Rutgers and then be favored against Michigan the following week?
Good wrinkle to add to that, yeah. Yeah, that does add another layer to it. But that's exactly, that tells me that Michigan's ranked high, but Vegas sees what
It's because they started high. It's just one of those
There's
deals.
preseason bias in there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Losing to Texas, you knew was going to happen, and that they paid the piper for that a little bit.
Just spoke about Rutgers and Indiana, but Army and Navy 4-0 to start the season together for the first time since 1945. That's when they used to just clobber everyone. Navy scored 38 or more in their first 4 games for the first time ever in Navy football. Duke 5-0 right now for the first time in 30 years. Manny Diaz down there.
Schedule though, I mean,
well, but 5-0.
Elon and Middle Tennessee are 2 of those wins, and then Northwestern Yukon and North Carolina, they've won by a combined 12 points. So they've hung in there.
They're the North Carolina state champs right now.
But they're not good.
I'm not saying they're good. I'm saying they feel good. It's different, right? They're 5-0. I feel good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you got Cal and the Calgorithm and their fans just having a blast stepping into the woke stuff. And that's been so funny to follow this season. Miami heading to Cal this weekend. Chris, you said, I think, Coke versus woke. Is that what's on there?
Coke versus woke.
Marshawn Lynch, too, is guest picker. If this game could not get any nuttier.
He's going to be blazed on that set.
1,000%.
Sitting next to Saban.
1,000%. It's good. You smell like weed, man. Jeez.
Give it back to my community. It's going to be great.
Speaking of feel good, how insane was that Alabama-Georgia game? And I know it was kind of going on around the same time as Ohio State-Michigan State, but Feinbaum said it was the best SEC game played in 20 years. I don't watch a ton of SEC games. I watch the big ones. Is that high praise? Or do you guys feel like that's kind of justified?
I thought the hype matched the outcome. I mean, that was an NBA game, but so Georgia was cooked in the first half. Georgia came back, took the lead, and then it was the exact NBA sequence. But that plays out a lot differently when it's a top 5 matchup amongst rivals with a guy that used to coach the defense at the home team. That was phenomenal theater.
Georgia, man, still has to play at number 2 Texas, number 12 Ole Miss, number 4 Tennessee. We're trying to figure out the new math of can you get in with 3 wins in this new world? If you're
3 losses, yes.
I'm sorry, 3
They'll
losses.
get a sympathy bid if they can, how they show up, right?
They might have 3 or 4. I mean, because those are some tough games remaining.
We have to see how these teams age too. We're talking about September Tennessee, which October Tennessee hasn't been worth.
And Ole Miss already took one at home against Kentucky. I don't think
right.
that far.
Kirby's too worried about that one.
October's the month that the preseason SEC inflation starts to tell on itself.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks, there's like 6 ranked teams in the top 8. Let it settle. Kirby now 1-6 against Alabama as a head coach. That's tough. He's so lucky he's got those natties because otherwise he would be on the hottest seat down there.
No one beats Alabama. It's like you pick them off once. They got him because with Jameson. That was the Jameson Williams hurt knee game. Yeah. They're very lucky to be at 1-6.
Kalen DeBoer is 30-3 as a head coach now, 6-0 against Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, and Steve Sarkisian, 5-1 in top 10 games. This is just what we all wanted, right? The greatest coach in college football history to resign, and then the guy steps in after him, just a total beast. Give me some Mike Shula. Give me some of the. I need some of that for them.
Dennis Franchi.
DeBoer's really good.
National games of note this weekend, 9 p.m. tonight on FS1. Kyle McCord in Syracuse at number 25 UNLV. Rebels favored by 6.5. That's fun for me because, get to watch McCord. Also, UNLV's had some really wild drama with their quarterbacks and I want more money and just checking out. And then the guy comes in and replaces him and plays way better than the other guy ever did.
I'm in Vegas right now, and if I weren't flying to Columbus for the Iowa game, I would stick around and
hang on. Kyle's having a fun year. Of course, he's already got the loss, the McCord special. But other than that, he's putting up good numbers. Very similar to kind of how he was at Ohio State. 90% of the time, he's great. That 10%, you're like, Kyle. Noon tomorrow, ABC, number 9 Missouri, number 25 Texas A&M. Don't know what to think about that one. I tend to think that Missouri might be overranked, but I don't know.
They definitely are. Beat Boston College by 6, beat Vandy by 3 in double overtime. They've not looked that great yet. That team that beat Ohio State, Ohio State had two hands tied behind it back, it felt like, in that game. Brady Cook has not done a lot this year. That Luther Burton is a beast, but they only have 4 touchdown passes, like, as a team right now. I mean, that's just amazing to me.
That's tough to get it going with that. And then 10:30, got a late one, a good late one. Number 8, Miami at Cal. You got Marshawn probably having the time of his life in the stands. Miami's favored by 10. Who do you guys like that one?
My heart says woke, but my brain and my nose say Coke.
10's a lot. I think Miami will win that game. I think, I don't want to say Miami's back, but I do think Cam Ward's he's a pretty nice player. I mean, they damn near lost Virginia Tech. I'm sure that got their attention, but I don't know. I see Miami winning, but I'd probably take the 10.
One to watch the Miami game last week. I feel like we've had so many good Friday night games this season. Like, I can't wait to watch tonight because you had Colorado the week before. You had Miami, Virginia Tech last Friday. We'll tune in for Kyle McCord. Maybe Kyle McCord, UNLV will bring us some magic tonight. All right, folks, it's time for our favorite part of the show, What's Your Price? We dive into things in life we could do for the right price. We're talking about fun, harmless stuff that doesn't hurt anyone or break the law, like driving 10 miles an hour under the speed limit for an entire year or entering a professional slap contest. So what's your price? It's football season. We tried to make these all football related, and this is a good one. Ramsey, I think you delivered this one earlier. It's how much to suffer an entire season with Brian Ferentz as the offensive coordinator of your beloved Buckeyes. So a man walks up to you with a briefcase full of money. He says, next season, Brian Ferentz is going to call every one of your snaps. How much do I have to pay you for you to accept this? And you're the one that makes the entire decision on behalf of Buckeye Nation, but you get to keep the money.
Day's still the head coach, or even if he is, you're saying Ferentz calls.
Oh, man, you imagine Dave would want to kill him like 3 minutes into the first game.
He would just trump him. It'd be like
no, we're not calling that.
Nick Siciliano, the quarterback coach.
In this imaginary hypothetical world, we have to Brian has to call all the plays.
I think we kind of experienced this 13 years ago. This is Jim Bowman suddenly being like,
it's way better than Brian.
I've got a bag with 3 plays in it. I'm just going to call them indiscriminately.
And they're all like first names of guys born in the 60s. There's Dave and there's Ron and there's plays.
They beat Illinois. That one they had one complete pass, and they beat Illinois when Ron Zook was there. And there was one sequence. I covered that game for 11 Warriors. He called 5 consecutive draw plays. That's not how you use draw plays. That's an instrument. That's part of the strategy. It's like, we're just gonna keep running the draw play. And you can just see the players it's like Boom Heron's like, all right, I guess we're running this again.
Slow that development down on this play. The opposite of how kids play Madden, basically, is how we called college football.
Yeah. So we've been through it. It didn't go well. I would take the same bargain. I'd say, look, Brian Ferentz can coach the team. I don't want any money. I want the same record the following year in return, which was 12-0.
But you have to take money. That's the whole thing. What's your money?
Yeah, you're changing the rules. What's your price?
You can't change the rules.
I'll be a martyr.
I would like a yacht too if we're.
All right, I'll take if this sorcerer can promise me an undefeated season the following year, I'll take $1. If not, I'll do it for $100K.
$100K. All right, now we're talking. There's no world where you take $50K to live through that.
No,
I don't think so either.
$50K doesn't buy much anymore.
No, that's a low number. You're like
right
to watch. Yeah. Chris,
hey, at least want a nice car out, like a really nice car out of it.
Yeah.
I was thinking 100.
You want something you can drive since your team won't be doing any of that.
You're going to be mad the entire season, though. You factor that in. You're going to be mad every Saturday.
Ohio State fans are watching this. They're mad anyway. They want the Jim Knowles standard.
Right.
2 pick sixes, a shutout. When they do nothing. We're mad all the time.
That's true. But you're like extra mad, and oh man, like you probably. I mean, could you even look forward? I mean, they're the Buckeyes, but we look forward to Bowman. I mean, we look forward to those games, is what I'm saying. Not necessarily Bowman. Oh, man, Brian Ferentz calling your plays.
The difference here is that, Gary Barta was Kirk Ferentz's boss, and he was also Brian Ferentz's boss. So his son didn't report to him, which means he didn't have to discipline him. This scenario, Brian Ferentz is just like a W-2. Pop isn't protecting him. The state's not protecting him. The university president's not protecting him, which means the beat, think about Dan Hope, Don Hope showing up at the press conference. Senior Hope is like, Brian, what the hell's going on? What are you doing? You'd have a whole detailed list of on 3rd and 18, you went off tackle. What were we trying to do there? I think we'd get some entertainment out of it.
It's a good point.
So much better players. I still feel like, how many think they could still win 9 games with Brian Ferentz? I do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You'd end up with like
because
Jeremiah
they could
Smith.
win more, but you wouldn't.
Jeremiah Smith would have Jake Stoneburner's statistics at the end of the year.
But you'll have a running back with 1,900 rushing yards. So, and also
Two of them,
600 carries. But
Right.
I think six figures is the right area to start. I think it's got to be about 100. You would know at the beginning of the year you wouldn't have a shot at the national championship, which is something that we don't often think in Columbus heading into a season. Just like,
But what if it was this year? This year, this roster.
oh my God, that's the better
Like you
question.
know this talent. Like you've
Pete,
got this roster.
What's your price for Brian to take over from here on out and call every game?
Do we get Phil Parker running the defense too?
No, just Brian. I think it's probably about 500 for me right now because this is a special team. So
Definitely ups the ante.
it's going to be a lot of
Over
money
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're probably losing to Iowa. I mean, that's the first thing that's coming up. All right, so 100K. I'm at 500K if he takes over this year. Chris, what if he takes over this year?
Oh, man, I don't know. You say taking over this roster, it's tough because it's like he's taking over this roster, but it's also like, man, this is still a really good roster and a really good defense. So I don't know. I might be more like 300, 350. I don't know if I would need 500.
You're not winning an Natty no matter what. This roster, the Chiefs roster, doesn't matter. You're not winning.
I love that this is just like pain and suffering. We're doing punies right now.
Yeah, that's an important part of the show. Cleans us.
I'll say 350.
350. Ramsey, take it.
I'm good with 100.
100. All right, man. Roll the dice with Brian. I love it.
I think we'd get some good content out of it. When Ohio State's eating shit, 11 Warriors tends to be a lot more readable than usual.
The content would be amazing. As always, take care of each other. Be good to each other. Go Bucks.